They're in Gander at the Fire Prevention Center in Gander in central Newfoundland. So with specifics of the fire itself, yesterday we felt, the officials felt, and we all felt that it was somewhat contained, but as we know in Newfoundland and Labrador, weather patterns change fairly quickly, and the winds changed dramatically yesterday to cause what was a quite dramatic shift in the fire pattern and subsequent predictive modeling of the fire. In fact, the winds got as high as 70 kilometers an hour and took the fire 2 kilometers in just 45 minutes, as I understand it, which is quite aggressive. That resulted in an immediate decision to evacuate the town of Churchill Falls, and I want to give a huge shout out to members of the community who helped make that decision, who executed that decision, and to say thank you to the people who left their homes on short notice. Of course, we knew that there was a fire close, but again, yesterday it felt like it was getting under control. So for many, that was very short notice to evacuate their homes and take their belongings. So to them, I want to say thank you for following orders, for following advice, and for leaving in what it proved to be a very efficient and orderly fashion. I also really need to thank the town of Happy Valley Goose Bay and Perry Trimper, who helped organize last-minute accommodations for up to 750 individuals that were evacuated from Churchill Falls. Some also went to Lab West, of course, but the bulk of people were displaced to Happy Valley Goose Bay. So a very broad and generous thank you to everybody in Happy Valley Goose Bay for accommodating your neighbors in Churchill Falls. The first responders have done an incredible job once again. I mean, we call on these people time and time again in the face of adversity and in the face of challenges and natural disasters, and to everybody who is on the front lines, whether that's the RNC or the individuals actually fighting the fire themselves. Thank you. Thank you for sacrificing your time. Thank you for putting yourself often in harm's way to help us fight this particular fire. So we all owe you a huge debt of gratitude. I had the opportunity just 2 days ago to talk to fire officials who were in Labrador and relocated to Labrador for this particular fire. And they are just incredible individuals, pilots, support staff, really just dedicating 8, 10, 12-hour days, longer even, to combat and suppress these fires. And we don't say thank you enough for the service that you provide. So on behalf of everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador, thank you for everything you're doing. But the people of Newfoundland and Labrador also have to help you. So that's why we're announcing today a provincial-wide fire ban for the entire province, not just Labrador. The bulk of our assets are deployed in Labrador right now, and as a result, we want to make sure that we don't have subsequent other threats that could dilute efforts in fighting the fire in Churchill Falls. So please, everybody at home, I know the weather is warm, I know it's nice, I know it's graduation weekend for many, but please do not light or any fires across the province right now. We just can't risk it. We will change as the situation and the risk profile changes, of course, as we've done in the past. But right now, the stress of the assets and the hardworking women and men who are fighting this fire, we need to support them. So let's do our part and avoid lighting any fires throughout the next few days. Hopefully, it'll be contained then. We have had a coordinated effort across government agencies, and we're very grateful for the support of the federal government and potentially from other provinces, and that's all being coordinated through a Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center. We've put in requests for subsequent support, and we feel like that will be actioned today. So I just want to make sure that everybody in Happy Valley Goose Bay, everybody who knows somebody who's been displaced, is doing their part to help these people who have had to leave their homes, and please make sure that you also consider the mental health issues and the stress and strain that goes with that, the anxiety that's created in such a quick fashion. There are provincial supports for people who have been displaced. Please avail of the Bridge the Gap program or call 811. But for all of us who are not from Churchill Falls, please do the right thing and check on our neighbors. Make sure that they're feeling okay, make sure that they have the supports that they need in Happy Valley or wherever else they've been displaced across our beautiful province. We've done it before. I know we'll do it again, but just a gentle reminder to do the right thing, to do the Newfoundland and Labrador thing, and look after each other in this time of stress. So with that, I will pass it over to Minister Lovelace for perhaps some more technical updates on the fire, and then we'll go to Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Premier. Jennifer Williams, good to be here with you. And online we have the Deputy Minister and ADM, Assistant Deputy Minister, who are working hard and certainly supports for me in the department, and they work with those that are on the ground. And I just want to say hats off and thank you to them for what they do. As we all know, weather conditions in Labrador and on the island have heightened the wildfire risk throughout the province. Currently, there are 7 fires active in Labrador, including the fire that has forced, unfortunately, the evacuation of Churchill Falls. Fire 607, as it's classified as, which is about 1,600 hectares in size, is approximately 6 kilometers to the southwest of Churchill Falls on the south side of Churchill River. Yesterday, the fire demonstrated significant volatility and advanced rapidly towards the community. Upon reaching a predetermined location that would trigger a recommendation for evacuation, forest officials made that recommendation. And resources, as we know, they're very important. Today, significant resources are working on the fires. The 4 water bombers in the fleet, along with a number of helicopters, are servicing the fire. Suppression activities will continue in the evening, provided it is safe to do so. Safety is paramount. And we have 2 water bombers per 4 hours, and that's on a rotational basis, and it begins around 11 a.m. in the morning. There are currently 40 wildland firefighting personnel and significant firefighting resources dedicated to suppression efforts on fires impacting the community of Churchill Falls, which remains our priority at this time. An incident management structure has been set up in Labrador to guide the department's fire activities. Experts on this team will be monitoring the situation and certainly directing response efforts throughout the day. And as I said, support's being very important, and the Premier had certainly mentioned it. From other provinces, we reach out to them when they need it, and they do the same for us, which is happening right now. And due to the current demand on firefighting resources, additional fire suppression support has been and is required. Forestry officials have been in contact with the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. The process is to make a request, and that request has been made for aerial support consisting of 2 to 4 water bombers, along with additional helicopters and specialized incident management team resources consisting of a fire behavioral analysis specialist and an ignition specialist. It is expected those resources will be available commencing today. We've also been, Premier alluded to, our federal partners. We've been in contact with them with resources may be available from Parks Canada. Again, the Premier mentioned about the risk, so therefore we're implementing a province-wide ban on open fires. Implementing the ban, we all believe it's an important precautionary measure that will help reduce the wildfire risk and support the efforts of our dedicated wildfire suppression teams battling active fires. And I say it, and the Premier said it as well, I strongly encourage all residents to be extra vigilant when taking part in outdoor activities, as high temperatures, as we can see out there today, high temperatures forecast for the coming days are expected to keep the fire hazard risk at elevated levels, so it can't be stressed enough. But I just want to mention a couple of, I guess, simple things, but it can become a big problem. That's operators of off-road vehicles. They need to be vigilant as well, because when you're traveling in grassy and forest areas, there's need attention to be paid for the vehicles that they're operating, because a proper screening and a baffling device should be used to prevent sparks from escaping and carrying a fire extinguisher in case you do happen to spark a fire, because we know people in this province are quite active on their off-road vehicles, so that's another precautionary measure for them. I encourage the public to visit the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture website or the Fire Smart Canada website for important fire prevention information for personal properties and neighborhoods. For more information regarding the fire ban, residents can contact certainly your local Forest Management District office. And just a few more supports in terms of the checking out the precautions. For the latest information on the location, status, and size of active wildfires, that can be viewed online at NL Active Wildfire Dashboard. In addition, provincial fire hazard index maps are updated daily and can be viewed at the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture website. So I say to the people that are viewing us and listening to us, be sure to monitor news and social media for latest updates. And lastly, I will say to report a fire, you can call 1-866-709-FIRE, which is 3473. 1-866-709-3473. And with that, I'll hand it over to the Premier.
Thank you, Minister, and we'll hand things over to Jennifer Williams, who I have to say her team has responded rapidly, succinctly, and efficiently with the view of protecting people first. Obviously, Churchill Falls is a company town with one principal asset, but it has always been a people-first approach, and I commend her and her team for ensuring that up to 750 people were evacuated in a reasonably ordered fashion. Quite remarkable, actually. So well done. And to the employees who are still in Churchill Falls, and there are some, we are sending you our best as well. Our thoughts and prayers, and stay safe. And of course, we're monitoring the situation very closely for your safety and protection as well. So with that, I'll turn things over to Jennifer Williams.
Thank you, Premier. And just to build on that, we were actually quite grateful for the thoughtful decision by government to order the evacuation yesterday for employees, their families. I mean, our employees are there, it's their families as well as the contractors that we had on site at this time of year. Really grateful for the compliance of the folks that Premier already mentioned. Their safety absolutely is and continues to be the most important aspect of this response. Our ability to execute on that certainly wasn't thought up in a moment. We had been thinking about this and planning for this as we would do in any year. You have to consider the risk of fire, and certainly in the days and weeks in advance, we were thinking about what do we do. So I think that was a big significant contribution to how smoothly that it went yesterday. As the Premier mentioned, we estimate about 750 people. One of the things that we also did do to make sure everyone was accounted for is the teams that we do have on site. They did a sweep of the town to make sure that anybody who wasn't supposed to stay and wasn't designated to stay, they were not still there. So we know that folks are safe and indeed at other locations outside of the town. As the Premier mentioned, critical personnel are on site, and we are all incredibly grateful for them to stay. I know that they are all very, pardon the pun, energized by the task that's afforded to them. They are really good at their job, and they're going to make sure that these assets remain in as good condition as is possible. Obviously, if things change, we will take direction, and we will make sure that, as the Premier said, their safety is paramount. I think both the Minister and the Premier have mentioned this. There's frequent communication amongst with Hydro and numerous folks within government on a daily, multi times a day basis to make sure that we are all acting with the most up-to-date information, and that has been, I think, really critical to our ability to manage our way to this point that we are today. The plant is operating normally. There is no change in plant output. All of our customers are being served. Certainly Labrador is served by the plant. We have customers obviously in Quebec, an important customer. They are all being served normally. We have not changed the plant output to adjust for the situation that we have. So we are able to keep things as status quo at this time. We have been in contact with those major customers. Quebec, obviously, we have big customers in Lab West. Every residential customer is important, obviously. But such situations like this can significantly impact some of our big industrial customers. So we've been in contact with them. I even got a call last night from IOC. Do you need our help? Which I thought was really, really neat. So further to what the Premier had to say, you know, when you go through these really trying situations, it's pretty impressive to see how everybody is really keen to step up and participate and help out. We obviously plan for contingencies, so if things do change, we are thinking about that. What does that look like? That is normal operation for a utility. We encounter difficult times all the time, whether that be a major storm. Certainly, and thankfully, we don't have fires that often, but we do have plans and contingencies in place for when these things could happen. And just building on that, the people with this problems really are incredible. I mean, this isn't even 24 hours ago that this evacuation was ordered, and people are safe. They are being cared for. They've had places to stay. They have food. It is really quite remarkable and inspirational. I mean, I'm going to use that word. And building on what the Premier had to say as well, just to our employees, they're your homes, and we know you've got to be very worried about that. We're doing everything we can. Government is doing everything they can possible to fight Mother Nature here. This is something that is really tough to deal with, but they are really fighting that to do everything they can to protect the things that you love back in Churchill Falls. That's all I have to say at this point. Happy to hand it back.
Great. And once again, we applaud and thank everybody in Lab West and Happy Valley Goose Bay. I know Minister Dempster, as Minister responsible for Labrador Affairs, has been in touch with many across the big land. And one agency that has really stepped up again, and no surprise, is the Salvation Army in helping feed those displaced in Happy Valley Goose Bay this morning. So kudos to everyone. Building on what Jennifer said, it's truly a Newfoundland and Labrador effort, and we'll be there to support each other and lean on each other in tough times. So with that, we'll throw it out open to questions.
Can I ask a little bit more about the supports that you say the province has reached out and asked for right now? Can you just outline those again for us?
Sure. So we've requested further asset support. We'd have asked for an additional water bombers and additional adjacent assets, an additional bird dog, which is basically air traffic control of the sky for the water bombers. That is all coordinated through this Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center. So that request is being processed currently, and we think it'll be, given the fire situation across the country, think it'll be viewed favorably, and hopefully we'll have some more resources available to us in short order.
How many people are still in Churchill Falls?
My understanding is there's approximately 40, it's approximately 20 odd employees, and then support staff, RNC officers still on site.
And you say there's plans, you're looking towards plans if something happens to Churchill Falls. What are those plans?
Mm-hmm. So certainly if we have to get to the point where we think employee safety and the other folks, the other provincial resources that are there along with the employees is at risk, a decision would be made to evacuate those folks, and they would have some time to go into remote operation mode. So we would make changes within the plant, reduce some load, talk to our customers about what that looks like, and then proceed to evacuate the town. So that just takes some sort of technical type steps. So our teams are reviewing, okay, what is it we got to do there? We make sure we're ready for all of those steps in the process. So that's basically what we're planning for. Hopefully we don't get there, but we are certainly have an eye to that.
But we'd have options available, road and air available to evacuate those employees should it be required.
Who actually makes that decision? Is that provincial forestry, or where does that come from?
It's a combination of provincial forestry officials based on the predictive modeling that they have, and government, and in this case where it is a company town, Hydro.
So what is the outlook right now? I mean, what are we looking at in terms of level of concern? Right?
Yeah, I mean, we can pass it to officials on the TV there, but right now the wind pattern is the most important thing. It is on the correct side of the river with respect to protecting the town. The risk is if it jumps the river, and the biggest driver of whether it'll jump the river or not is the wind patterns. And so right now there's a favorable wind pattern, but we live in Newfoundland and Labrador. Winds change all the time. We are watching closely the humidex and the humidity content, and the fuel that's surrounding the river in particular. All of those things go into the predictive modeling, which allows us then to base our decision. But I think the single biggest item in that decision matrix right now would be if it crosses the river with respect to the people in Churchill Falls and the asset. But I'll turn it over to the officials who are in Gander, which is rightfully the center for the province with respect to forest fire management.
Thanks for the question. I would say, as Premier said, right now there's a northwesterly wind pattern. Based on our modeling, the continuation of that pattern should see the fire stay to the south of the Churchill River. Should we get a different weather pattern, as Premier said, entirely possible, our modeling would be different. Warmer weather or temperatures, that makes a difference as well. So we do modeling twice a day at least, and right now we're hoping that weather pattern holds.
In my experience with the fires in Central 2 years ago, is we do the modeling, and then the flight crew assess the not only the weather pattern but the accuracy of that modeling, and all that builds into that's the next steps that we take. So the modeling may come up in the morning and think it's going to go one way, and then the flight crews who fly the 1,600 hectares will be able to tell us the accuracy of that prediction.
When you say flight crews, you're referencing the water bomber flight.
And well, a lot of that information comes from the helicopter pilots, actually. Yeah.
There's certainly reconsideration now, and there's been a lot of discussion with this fifth water bomber, and I'm wondering in the last 16 hours if you faced some criticism for not having it done yet, and I was wondering in the last 16 hours.
Yeah, no, I mean, the reality is an additional water bomber wouldn't have changed this particular scenario. We are committed to fixing that water bomber. We're making progress on it. Would we like to have it? Sure. But moving towards the future, what I'm more excited about is building out a center of excellence in forest fire fighting in central Newfoundland, including maintenance of water bombers and a training facility for water bombers in the future.
You told reporters Tuesday, I believe, that there's always the ability to build a stronger, more robust system. Since the fires in Central 2 years ago, what has been done to make the system more robust?
Well, we continue to train forest fighters across the province, both professional and on a voluntary basis. We continue to look at the assets. I believe we've added a bird dog to the asset complement, or we're acquiring a bird dog. I'll pass that over to the minister. But that was a direct reflection of the experience in Grand Falls, Windsor, needing that air traffic control in the sky. We're committed, fully committed to fixing that water bomber. It's just finding the right place to do it. You can imagine the supply constraints with respect to water bombers and across Europe even, and the subsequent maintenance and mechanics that are available. So we're trying to find the best place to fix it. We want to fix it in Newfoundland and Labrador, and that's taking a little bit of extra time. But that water bomber wouldn't have made a difference in this particular scenario. But I'll turn it over to Minister Lovelace.
Right. And the Bay d'Espoir fire was certainly first and foremost in my responsibilities, because it was leading to my district, and it was a difficult fire. But we learned from that, and we certainly focused on significant training and other. In terms of the water bomber, I remember during that time, even though I wasn't forestry minister at the time, I was TI minister. If we had 20 water bombers at the time, it would have been a challenge in terms of the fire. But that fifth water bomber is important. We recognize that, but we take lead, we take advice from officials, and from an operational perspective, the officials always tell me as minister that we're ready. We are equipped. I can certainly ask the officials online even to give us further details on what we've done. We were asked a question, I believe, just yesterday about what do you do in several months. We do 12 months training in terms of focus on what resources we have, how we can strengthen those resources, training. Young people are becoming more interested in the firefighting as a career, because it's a good career, and as any season goes through, we do a debrief at the end of the season and see where we can strengthen that moving forward. But I can certainly ask.
We'll pass it over to officials, but we certainly see an exciting, an opportunity, given the fact that forest fires are becoming more and more a reality of the Canadian summer, to continue to grow the experience and expertise in central Newfoundland with respect to training, both on the ground and from an aviation perspective, and we're fully committed to continuing to do that. But we'll turn it over to Jamie.
Thanks, Premier. I guess the first thing I'd say is I think people would be familiar now with the dashboard system that we use for mapping and displaying the patterns. I think that's something that was called for coming out of the big fire in Central. So we've actioned that. The other piece I'd like to focus on is our predictive modeling capabilities. The people who do this, the experts in that field, it's very much a data-driven exercise. So we've trained new people with new skills to do that. And we've also invested in new weather forecasting equipment and tracking that we didn't have before. Besides that, I'd reference the agreement we signed with Natural Resources Canada, and that has helped us update our vehicle fleet and other equipment. And we'll certainly be looking at the bird dog asset under that program. So I'll leave it there, but I will ask Blair to speak to the training aspect that the minister referenced.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Jamie. Last year we had a record year for training in the department. So we trained the most staff we've ever done. We've developed a strategic training program going forward. And I'm really pleased with the progress we've made on that. And I think we're better prepared than we have been in a long time to deal with situations like this.
Question for Ms. Williams. I wanted to ask about, you mentioned clearing the town. Was that done by hydro staff or, and who would be working with them in terms of RNC or RCMP assets in the area?
So the folks that we have staying back is both plant operators as well as our fire and emergency services. So we have our own fire and emergency services staff on site. So I'm 99% sure it was the fire and emergency services hydro staff that did a sweep of the town. So made sure that everybody was indeed evacuated.
And can you give some sense of like the assets that hydro has available in the town and, what, if anything, they could do if there was a case of the fire approaching?
You mean like firefighting assets? Certainly we don't have water bombers ourselves, but there would be, and I'm sorry, actually I don't have the exact number.
I
but we
mean,
have a
if
little
it
bit.
ever got to that point,
Yeah.
we would be past the point of evacuation for those individuals. So we would ensure that based on the modeling, based on the weather pattern, based on the distance from the town and the side of the river, which again is the most critical piece in all of this, we would evacuate before they had to kind of take up arms themselves, so to speak. Yeah.
I was actually just thinking more about hydro assets and.
To protect them. Yeah. No, sorry.
Yeah, no, and I do think that, I guess a bit further to bridging both the question and the Premier's comment is we would not be equipped to fight a large forest fire. We would be equipped to fight, assets that would be typically expected in a town that we would protect. So I know that there's a couple of fire trucks, that sort of thing. So we don't have, but we do have our own helicopters that can indeed also drop water. But obviously by ourselves fighting that fire, we wouldn't be able to do it on our own.
Are they working on the north side of the fire, say like fuel mitigation?
That's my understanding, and some good news from this morning, and these guys are the experts, they can tell you. Some good news from this morning when we had our 8 a.m. call was at about 8:15, halfway through the call, there was some minor amount of rain dropping on the area, which is not only good for the fire from our perspective, but it also allows further suppression activity. So we're hopeful that they'll be able to work on that. As the minister said, it starts about mid-morning, but then it goes into the early evening, and these pilots and the staff just are continuously doing circuits. It's pretty impressive. But I'll turn it over to Jamie or Blair if you want to maybe address the particular geometry of the strategy for fighting fire.
Thank you, Premier. Yeah, so today we are focused heavily on suppression in the Churchill River Valley. So as has been mentioned several times, we really want to prevent the river from crossing the valley. We're lucky enough to have a little bit of northwest wind, which is creating a window there for us to do that. So the tankers are going to work that edge of the fire throughout the day and into the evening. And we're hoping to be able to keep the fire down to the point where, even though we face 36 to 48 hours of pretty volatile weather conditions, we'll prevent that crossing.
A question for the minister and the officials picture, I mean, people are gonna be somewhat familiar with some of the bigger fire events across the country. There's a lot of discussion of climate change. I'm just wondering if you can kind of place this on a bit of a scale for us in terms of the aggressiveness of this fire, using some of those, you know, more details or measurements that you might have in hand of intensity or
Yeah, I can stab at it, but I'll hand it over to the DM or the ADM. I think it's unfortunate that the fire is happening, but it is a significant fire. When you're into evacuation, I think every experience brings new measures. I just attended forestry meetings in BC where this is not new to that part of the country, and they even around the airports and around significant assets that they're doing prescribed burning to reduce the biofuels. So, you know, that's a takeaway, you know, for us especially. But I think that goes to the supports of each province, and everybody's certainly supportive of each other in terms of measuring what it is we need to do to combat forest fires. And we all know climate change is certainly on minds of everybody, and it's whether it's flooding or fires, it's becoming more prevalent, and it's coming. If anything, it's becoming more normalized, and which you know, it helps us all in terms of the preparedness of it. But so I will end it there. I don't know if the staff, if Blair or Jamie has anything to add to that.
I don't have much to add to that, Minister. I would just say that some of the investments that we are making certainly focus on the weather and good data and forecasting. So anytime you have more volatile weather or more significant weather events, for example, like the frequency of lightning strikes in Labrador, which pretty much start all the fires in Labrador, then, you know, those new investments and future plans going forward will always contemplate the fact that the climate is changing.
Sorry, I guess just to press at that, I'm just wondering if you have any numbers at all, or if there's anything that we might be able to use for, I guess, comparison.
To measure like intensity?
Intensity and
Yeah.
kind of where it's been.
The size is what, the 1,600 hectares is one parameter, I suppose. I'm not, Jamie, maybe you're aware, I don't recall any intensity parameters or metrics from the Grand Falls scenario, but.
I'm not aware of them, Premier, from the Grand Falls scenario, but there are indices around intensity that our fire modelers use. But I'm going to turn the technical aspect of that over to Blair.
Thank you. Yeah, we classify our fires in categories 1 through 6, where a category 1 fire is smoldering, it's in the ground, it's not too much heat, all the way up to a category 6 fire, which is in the crown of the forest. Trees are candling, which means they're sort of bursting into flames, and the fire is traveling very rapidly. So the fire yesterday, in a very short time period, went from category 4 to a category 6 fire. And that's when we saw that rapid spread that the Premier referenced, where we had the fire travel 2 kilometers in 45 minutes. So it's been a very intense fire. It's there's a lot of fuel in the area, and it's relatively dry. So it's certainly been a fairly intense burn.
And sorry, would you place that around 5 or 6 now, or where are we at this point?
Right now, we're still treating it as category 6. A little bit of rain helped us out this morning, but it was relatively short-lived, and we're certainly concerned about the rest of the day.
I had a question about the Quebec customer. Obviously, it's quite big. Have you had any discussions with Hydro-Quebec about this? I understand it's about 50% of daily energy in Quebec is generated here, so double checking if that's true. And subsequent to that, if they reach out at you, what has that conversation been?
Yeah, I mean, the 15% would really be a number on an annual basis. And so Quebec obviously tells us what amount of power they need at any point in time. So on a day like today is very different than a day on the coldest day of the winter. But on an annual basis, it's 15%. Our teams, I'll call it operational teams, have been in a lot of discussion with Hydro-Quebec. I was texting the CEO last night. So, you know, there's a number of reach outs and coordination with our teams, our colleagues in Quebec. So that's well in hand with regards to their ability to prepare. Obviously, from a contingency planning perspective, we are also in contact with customers down the eastern seaboard, so into Nova Scotia. So if things happen to change and there's changes to how things are operating in Labrador, it could have a domino effect. So again, we have to always be thinking about what if, and then we do the planning so that those folks can be ready for it on their end of things.
Similar to that, I wonder if you had any conversations with any of your counterparts across the country, or one of those was mentioned last night.
Sure, I've chatted with several federal ministers, all offering to help. So I have no doubt that as we've been there for and offered help in the past to people of Quebec, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, Alberta, even when they're facing forest fires, that the response will be equivalent.
I guess for residents who have been evacuated to Happy Valley Goose Bay, like, is it fair to say that that evacuation order will remain, into
Yes.
tonight? And where will they, find, I guess, where will they get their information on whether or not the evacuation order is lifted in the coming, whatever it will be?
Well, certainly they should check with us, with government, for regular updates, and Hydro for regular updates. But I don't foresee that evacuation order changing in the next 24, 48 hours, certainly. But
There's a big event that's scheduled for Happy Valley Goose Bay in the coming week. I'm just wondering, has there been any discussion about maybe asking for that event to be held, or looking at that in case of maybe sparing some spaces for folks who are displaced?
I'm not aware of that event, sorry, off the top of my head, but we have, the nice thing about Happy Valley Goose Bay is it does have a 5-wing Goose Bay, which has barracks available. It also has the potential to house people in Muskrat, in the Muskrat Falls village, if you will, and the barracks that are there that have been not occupied for a while. So there is capacity to house people that have been displaced. Hopefully, we won't have to avail of all of that, but it is available, and the Canadian Armed Forces have been supportive through MHA Perry Trimper in terms of offering support there as well.
Premier, you might have, I was going to say, you might have said this, and I just may not recall it from your opening comments at the beginning. Of the large number that was evacuated, about 80 have availed of, I'll call it public
Yes, yep.
space. So, there's not 500 people that are staying in the gym at the Y.
Friends and family.
Friends and family, and lots of folks, finding their way. I think your point is understood, but it is that amount of people who are currently seeking that kind of arrangements for accommodations.
I think we covered it. Any last questions?
Yeah, just to confirm, that's the long-term plan? Like, what's the long-term plan for these people if the evacuation order continues? Is that it?
Well, hopefully, long-term, I guess, long-term for this event hopefully is not into weeks and months, but hopefully it's days, when the weather pattern changes. I know the weather's not been fully cooperative, but certainly the plan in the short to medium term would be to house people in housing facilities that are available luckily in Happy Valley Goose Bay, either through the barracks at the base or in the housing availability, the housing complex that is Muskrat Falls. Yeah. Great. Well, thanks everybody, and for anyone watching at home, please make sure you check on your neighbors and please honor the fire ban. Don't do anything silly out there. We need to do our part to support the hardworking women and men who are fighting this fire and trying to protect Churchill Falls. Great.
Good job there.